Call either? Ooh, all right.
Mention that we're all here.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we get lazy drivers.
So we'll
that
call the
don't-
meeting of the Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, April 13th to order. And I just was informed that since everyone is present today, we don't have to do a roll call. We have all members present. So we'll move on to our first order of business. We don't have anyone calling in by teleconference today, so we don't have to pass that resolution, or?
We're ready.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. That would be just to approval of the minutes from last month's meeting.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda, or the minutes from last meeting? Hearing none, we'll just call for a vote then. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, 4.1, is the administrative activities report for March 2021. Is that you, Heather?
All right. Good morning, Commissioners and President Brahm. You have before you the report for the activities for the month of March. I'll just note under the public housing program that a maintenance technician has now been hired and has been on board for a couple weeks, and that is going very well. Other than that, there was nothing out of the ordinary.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the report.
For the motion. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the report? Hearing none, we'll have the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, 5.1, is Broadway House Furniture Replacement Project.
All right. So this project would include replacement of 40 chairs that are used in the common areas of the building. Most of the chairs would be in the community room, but there would be about 10 to 15 chairs in other sitting areas throughout the building. We have a couple chairs usually by the front door for people that are waiting for a ride. And then we have a couple sitting areas on third and fourth floor that we would be using these chairs in as well. The chairs that we have now were purchased free. They are upholstered, and we have them professionally cleaned on a regular basis, once a year, some more often. As a result of the pandemic, housing authorities have been replacing their upholstered furniture, grade vinyl furniture that can be more easily cleaned and disinfected by staff on a regular basis. So, in the community room and has been closed for a year. Brown County Public Health has advised us that we look up this summer as more likely to be vaccinated. We would like to have this new furniture in place prior to the community room back up. A photo of the example of style of chair we're purchasing, which is very similar in purchase to the existing of now. I estimate the project to cost about $15, and we have fund grant money. About $80,000 left in the grant, and then we just received the 2021 grant, and I think that was about $100,000. So it's a simple project, but one I just see a benefit to in doing things connected with COVID for who knows how long.
I don't have any problem with this request. I do have a question about how old are the table and when would they be replaced? Can you talk a little bit about that?
The tape just at the same as the 2003. They don't need.
It's a while.
Long time.
Well, and I think it's appropriate in light of our new world that we do have things that safety consciousness with them being able to be disinfected easily is paramount for us to move forward. So,
And these shouldn't stain like the upholstery and.
and I would imagine they do get lots of use in the Broadway house. So.
The community room gets daily use. The other sitting areas, maybe not so much, but if I'm replacing them, I just want to replace them all and be done.
That makes the most sense. So, all right. Any additional discussion? Otherwise, we'll just call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Next item is staff report, claims list for for last month from staff.
All right, and I'll just point out a couple items. We are paying our payment in lieu of taxes for the year on this claim, and then also under the City of New Ulm March expenses, that includes the first 2 quarters of property insurance. So those are why this claim is high and seeing lately. And also, sorry, I should mention, our natural gas bill house was a little bit higher because of that we had in February.
We've been able to manage that, so it sounds like, and
Yeah, and prices are going to be a one-time.
yeah, and just in case, I know the payment in lieu of tax is for Garden Terrace.
That is for,
Oh, we pay it on that as well, even if it's a public facility? Okay. Discussion on the claims list.
I'll make a motion to approve.
March 17th, the partnership met, and each member voted, had 3 votes, and they were supposed to vote 3 priorities that they felt each partner should be working on to complete this year to kind of help move economic development forward, and so the ball just doesn't stop because, for the partnership, it's putting together an MOU, putting together a 3-year work plan, and process of handling, confidentiality, conflict of interest, and things of that nature. So building the foundation of what the partnership is going to do as a group, collectively. So for the EDA, the 3 priorities, or the top 3 voted priorities, were develop policies regarding industrial land sales, utilities, assessments, use of tax increment financing or tax abatement, and tax-based density goals. 2, explore possible arrangement between the EDA and NUEDC to reduce the NUEDC's holding costs for their property in the airport industrial park. And 3, plan and budget for downtown revitalization, housing, comprehensive plan, and capital improvement plans. So with those goals, the EDA, use the EDA. You don't have to choose to do any of them. You can choose to do one of them. It's really up to you what you feel the EDA wants to focus on. I will say all 3 of the priorities that have been selected are in line with the current goals that the EDA put together. I think that was in January. At your January meeting. And a lot of the stuff we're currently working on, there is some crossover between the city and EDA, assessments, that's more on the city side of things, tax increment financing, tax abatement, that's on the city side of things as well. And so it's in conjunction with what we want to do and kind of what I've already started, doing with some of the new ways the EDA is looking at different programs and the loans and so forth. So some of the stuff we're currently doing, and I think they're not a stretch of any imagination to get these accomplished. Downtown revitalization, I know that's been a big thing for the EDA, and just continuing and how we do that. Housing has always been a priority for the EDA. The comprehensive plan, that's on the city side, but EDA will be involved in that, and we'll be rolling, working on that in the next year. And the capital improvement plan, that's really all on the city side of things. So there's a blurring of what the city and EDA do, but a lot of these things are going to be in line with what I feel the EDA's priorities are and what the EDA should be working on. The only real one that will probably have more discussion than the other 2 would be, any arrangement between the EDA and NUEDC to reduce their holding costs for that land out there, and that simply might be, we can just explore those possibilities and present them to the EDA at another time, and just continue that discussion. I mean, we've been in discussion with them since I've been here to figure out a way to help them move that land, maybe potentially buy that land or look at other arrangements. So we can continue that, or as the EDA, you can say, we're not interested at this time. let's move on to something else. So that's kind of open for discussion and what you feel, if you want to focus on these, if you don't. We will be having a partnership meeting tomorrow, and we'll report back on kind of what everyone's collective groups has said on the priorities, so we can see where everyone falls at that point in time.
Chris, you had mentioned earlier about some crossover, and I'm just curious, like things like tax abatement and tax increment financing, that's clearly a function of the city. The EDA really doesn't have the authority to, in so much, are they looking for a set of criteria from the EDA that we would say, if you do A, B, C, and D, you would be eligible to be considered for tax increment financing? Is that a role? The
guidelines, but a lot of that's going to be spelled out, and we've been working on, what are those guidelines? Staff and myself have been working on that. So,
right. I mean, I think I interpret it as maybe some coordination.
Yep.
If a potential business comes to town, we can lay out a whole set of possible avenues for them to look at a development project or whatever, including us. But I was just curious. I didn't know what role we would play in things like the taxing structures and such. Other than to offer guidance to say, in coordination with some of the things that we're doing. And I think that's, I don't know that we haven't always kind of done that. Yeah. My concern with this is that if we kind of set a set of rigid standards, then we're not being flexible enough, and we have to take every business or potential business as to what their specific needs might be. Mm-hmm. And I would offer that we'd always want to remain somewhat flexible in those approaches. So, which I think we've done in the past.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. A lot of the things when we do, and you'll be looking at a loan later, loans that we do, we look between 1% to 2%, and it really depends on job creation, level of investment. So let's say they only create one job because it's a sole proprietor, but they're investing $5 million. Does that balance out where it's, okay, that's a 1% loan versus, a 2% or somewhere in between, and be flexible. And, same thing with tax abatement, and tax increment financing. It's looking at the bigger picture and all the parts. And I think that's where the partnership is going to really kind of function as, okay, well, the city can do X, we'll do the tax abatement. The EDA could give a loan, and this is the term. Do this. So it's a collective that knows the parts of each of the project that's coming in, and maybe, there's some projects where, the EDA can't help on this one because, they're where you guys are pledging your funds to other projects, but at least everyone's on the same page, and we're all that in from. Sure. I see, the part really facilitating those projects, where the members are all staff of these groups, and then it's ultimately up to the board to decide, what they want to do, because each member has its perspective, but we all have to answer to, and so it's just making sure on page you're going to know your work plan to be, the partnership is working on, and then we'll start taking, because these things can be done in less than a year, and then we'll just move forward to what the next goals are and start taking, and it'll be every member perspective, let their board know, hey, this is what we're doing.
Matrix here. We're going to be working to develop the tax increment financing and provide businesses. That still means that we can have some flexibility. Yeah. Okay. And then on that, see anything on here about the planning and something that is going to indecide and help us move forward when that changes.
So that's something on the city side there where subscription to the partnership at this point is going to be very limited because it is limited at this point, and the zoning is literally the city's number one priority at this point. So they're on finishing that zone because it ties into the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan cannot exist without the zoning ordinance because really the backbone of the. So, a lot of this stuff, I'll be working on, with the community director and the planner to get some of the stuff. And then once the zoning ordinance, John
and that's
and
when,
Dave.
Mr. Dalton.
We should look to that, and I think this is a way we can do that and play a role in that. I think the city and the EDA are going to be probably the primary funding and financing sources as a bunch of these projects come forward, but I think that that's a role that we're set up to do. That's exactly why we exist, so, anyway, and I'm intrigued. I hope we can get the downtown revitalization, something really, to me, that's probably one of the projects we could collectively move forward with sooner. Other things are kind of in the works. That one, I think, is one that maybe deserves a little more of our attention, so.
And I will say, we do have a couple projects or programs in the works that, more on the city side, or one's on the more on the city side, but it'll still be presented to the EDA, so what the program is, and the other one will be, potentially funded by the EDA. So hopefully next month I'll be able to present both of those to the group. So they're kind of in the planning stage right now.
Chris, when I look at the top priorities for the city and the EDA, it talks about developing policies regarding industrial land sales. Do we have anything in place now with that?
So currently, no. When someone comes in and we're looking at, potentially purchasing land, we are very, we've always been very fluid, as Dan had alluded to. So I'll use DOC as a very good example, because that was, the first piece of property that I had, been part of the transaction. And that was literally, looking at what the level of investment is, the number of jobs, and saying, okay, we'll purchase the land from the EDC, we'll sell it to you for $1, and then as part of the tax abatement, what we'll do is we'll reclaim some of that tax abatement that we're giving you to help cover the costs of the land. So it really depends on case by case basis, what people are, what they're asking for. The specific project, number of employees. So we take all that into consideration, and we, look at, what can we recoup through, why am I blanking? Through property tax, and if we can recoup that within 5 to 7 years, then, to me, that's a very good deal, because we're still getting the base property tax. We're just missing out on what that increase, a portion of that increased increment will be. So again, we're very fluid, but setting out some general guidelines of how to trigger some stuff, I think would just be more beneficial to people looking to come to the city, business attraction and things like that. It'll be kind of spelled out. So there's no surprises, at the end of the day, but we can still be flexible. If they're going to come in and invest $10 million, maybe that moves the needle one way,
Sure. So would you be helping us with developing those policies, or would we have to form a committee to do that?
No, we would, so between John Nisley, Dave Schnobrick, and myself, we would put those together and present those, on the sales side of things. It would come to you, and you would say, yes, these are, good policies, or you can make amendments, and then recommend that to council to approve.
Okay. Thank you.
I know when I took a look at this the other night, I like it. It gives us a map to go on, and where we can go, and who's going to be doing what. And you can either break it down so much that it can be so detailed, or you can consolidate and make it smaller. And when I looked at this, I thought, wow, row number 1 and row number 3 really say a lot of the very same things with just different words. Mm-hmm. Not totally, but you look at the partnership, developing a memorandum versus establishing policies and procedures, and to me that's kind of the same thing, and the same under some of the city and the EDA things. And I don't know the answer to this, but I would challenge your group to give that some thought, instead of maybe having 3 rows, just to kind of consolidate it into, here we got 2 rows, and maybe we get things done a little faster because it's not broke out quite as much. But if you just look under the partnership, you're developing a memorandum of agreement and identifying roles, responsibilities. And then you look under row number 3, you're addressing confidentiality, conflict of interest, role of public sector. It's the same thing, basically. And So I'm assuming this was broke out for a reason. I see row number 1 got all the big boats, and yes, it's awesome. But I see a lot of things under the city creating that marketing partnership and economic development. To me, that's pretty important, and that should be row number 1 if that's the row of importance. My opinion, of course. But it seems I just don't know as you go through this, that maybe this could be into a 2-step plan versus a 3-step. So just my comment on that.
Yeah, well, and they're not steps. These are just the top three. So again, to me, and you are correct, under the city portion, number 3, economic development, web presence. To me, that's literally the number 1 focus of the city on this side of things, because without a place for businesses to go or look at information, what's the point of having policy and procedures and stuff like that if they
Well
can't find
done.
the
It's very well
information?
done.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and there's not a specific order. Like I said, it's not a specific order. These are just the top 3 that the partnership felt we could accomplish and finish within, a year or so. Kind of the first steps of the 3-year
So
plan.
is there a plan then for the partnership to circle the top 4 things on this chart?
No, so basically each group is going to focus.
Their area.
They'll focus on their area.
Okay.
And they may come back and say, you know what, we can only do number 1, or we can only do number 2, or whatever that is. We can only
makes
focus on
sense.
this one. So
Thank you.
that's where you are. You can say, yes, we want to focus on all 3, or hey, we want to focus on number 1 and 3, and 2 we'll have discussions with, but it's not high on the EDA's priority list. So I'm kind of looking for that kind of direction or guidance from the EDA so we can report back to the partnership tomorrow, where we are.
I just wanted to make the comment that kind of, watching this for some time, it's very good to see these groups coming together, starting to gel, have a plan, have a mission. I think that that's so important. And I'll agree with Les that the matrix was very well done. And it looks like over the next couple of months that there's going to be some good progress made on some of these items. So I thank you and looking forward to it.
I like the fact that we're attracting business, and it's not only small, but I'm hoping it's large as well.
Yeah.
And that we also then do a little bit of retention with our businesses that are here, both small and large. I think it's totally important to just keep all that going, so.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too. So, business retention and attraction are kind of the same side or different side of the same coin. And that's, when you approved using Salesforce, that's kind of what Salesforce is going to be that help with that retention and attraction piece. So when we go out and we do business visits or we talk to businesses on the phone, it's collecting that information and putting it into the Salesforce database. And then we can actually create programs based on actual data. Our business is expanding, our business is shrinking. Are they, looking for employment? Are they, downsizing? Do they have an online presence? And we can compile that information and see where we should focus programs. If a lot of companies are laying off, do we need to, really work with Career Force or with the state to, get people in to do to help with transitioning or, job skills training so they can transition into another job and things like that. So, in the near future, we are going to be a lot more data driven because we're going to have information to really make those decisions.
I'll go ahead and approve the new partnership priorities as they pertain to the EDA.
I'll second that motion.
Perfect.
So in approving these, then we are effectively adopting their recommendations.
Yeah. So, well, it's saying that that the EDA and mostly on the staff side of thing will be working towards finishing these goals within about a year timeline is what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when it comes to the exploring the holding costs for the lots, I mean, what they're asking us to do is pay their real estate taxes.
Yeah, and again, that's more we can look at So again, it's working towards those goals. That means you will work towards that goal. So if they have a proposal, it will be presented to the EDA, and
Okay,
it'll
so
be
the
up to you
impetus is still on, in this case, the EDC to come forward with a plan.
with some type of proposal.
So all we're saying, in effect, is we're receptive to listening to what they propose.
Yep.
We don't neither have to approve nor not approve any proposal that comes
Yeah,
forward.
so, yeah, and that's what the priorities are, is we're marching towards these. You know, if we don't get them done in a year, that means it's just extended, you know.
Well,
'cause
my
again, down-
concern
yeah.
is, we've already discussed possible adaptations or changes, and I don't want us to be held.
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's just working towards the goals.
Okay. So we had a first and a second, I'm sorry, right? Is there any additional discussion? Otherwise, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 6.2, EDA loan to M&K Forestry and Land Management.
All right. Commission President, Commissioners, before you have a loan request from M&K Forestry. Unfortunately, neither business partner could be here. They couldn't get the time off work, but I think I have pretty much all the information to answer any questions that you would have. So M&K Forestry and Land Management, they're looking for $50,000 to help close their loan to purchase equipment so they can start their business. The equipment for them is currently on hold, and it's just waiting for the EDA to either approve the loan so they can purchase the equipment. The total loan package is $273,000. The proposed terms of the loan is $50,000, interest rate at 2%. Term is 10 years. It would create two jobs, and that would be the owners at $25 an hour. There will be 3 conditions to the loan. And the first condition would be they would have to meet with the SBDC consultant that we retain to refine their business plan. The second would be to meet with the consultant to help them with their financials on a quarterly basis and submit those to the EDA or to EDA staff. And when M&K is ready to expand their business, that they have to work with the city to help them find a location within the city limits to expand their business. And just on another note, they do currently have 2 contracts ready to go. So when if the EDA does approve the loan and they can, and we fund it, the minute they purchase their equipment, they do have contracts waiting so they can start generating income.
Seemed like a very odd question, but following our approval, it sounds like they have 2 contracts ready to go. I know that when it comes to getting equipment, there's been some delays and different things, different, I guess with everything still going on with COVID. So do you know if they have the equipment ready as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The equipment's being held. I think it's a used piece of equipment that's being held, and the owner of that equipment is holding it for them.
Thank you.
This is the first, I don't think I've ever said no to a loan or even had any concerns, and I have to admit I have a little bit this time. So I guess maybe I need a little bit more information either from Chris or from our attorney. When we do these loans, it's primarily to help increase jobs, and what we have here is the 2 owners. So we really don't have employees, we have owners. Is there talk about expanding and having additional employees? Have we done this where we've only had the owners getting the loan and we're not really, we're creating 2 jobs, but I want to talk about that a little bit.
So again, looking at this, it's the entrepreneur, spirit at the end of the day. It's
I know.
someone
That's the hard
starting a
part.
business, and they do want to expand. That's part of what they want to do. This is help getting them started, getting those contracts, knowing what their capacity is going to be, and then speaking with them. They want to expand here. I mean, that wasn't even a doubt in their mind when I had asked them, hey, one of the conditions is going to be that you have to, come to the city, and when you're looking to expand, to help us find, just so we can help you find a location. There wasn't even hesitation on their part. They're like, no, we want to stay here. We want to be a new owned business. And part of it too, that's why we did add the other two conditions of having them consult with the SBDC so that they can get that guidance and that help, because that's what entrepreneurs need sometimes. They may have the ideas, but sometimes they don't know how to run a business, and that's where the SBDC is going to help guide them, especially with their financials.
Have either of these two ever run a business before?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
But they do have experience in what they're doing.
They do have experience, okay. And they have experience in negotiating contracts for work? Because my understanding is a lot of their work is going to be done with various units of government.
Potentially, yes.
For their forestry work.
Mhm.
So, and that's a specific animal unto itself in negotiating and executing contracts with government bodies, so.
Yep. And the SBDC can also help with that, and we as the city can help them with that.
And I know, I mean, that was one of the things I had suggested but it's kind of we're giving the money out first and then asking them to go back and develop a plan. And I would hope, and maybe this set of framework going forward, is that they do that piece first. And what I would suggest is that when they come forward, we have a viable business plan that maybe is created through the SBDC. And even could the SBDC put together a loan proposal for our purposes? So we have a lot of the questions maybe addressed. We could create a framework and coordinate with them so that they get the first look at it. They can put some financial information together, so it makes our decision maybe a little less questionable, because I agree with Les. Nobody wants to turn away a good potential business, but I think what we need to do, and maybe I'm putting my banker hat on here for a minute, but we're becoming a creditor, and we have to assess risk. I look at it like, okay, we give these fellows $50,000. Is that $50,000 that we're not giving to someone else that might be more likely to be successful?
And more employees potentially.
Exactly. And I think what we want to do is this is maybe a good one to cut our teeth on in terms of trying to develop a solid framework and say, okay, and I think that really goes back to some of the stuff with the partnership. I think what we want to do is maybe in some instances better formalize how we want to try to approach these sorts of things. I don't want to turn away any potential business that's going to succeed. I look at it like this, and I think Les is creating jobs, expanding tax base. Is it providing a necessary community function or service or good or product that our community really needs? I get where these guys, I think if you go out to the 23rd North, where they just cleared that, I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing these guys would do, right? And putting in new right-of-way. I mean, I get it. Or the county ditches and things that need periodic cleaning. That's going to provide functioning, because agriculture is such an important part of our region. I mean, it all makes sense to me, but my only other thing, and again, I'm tightening my banker hat in this case, is this equipment, is it going to last 10 years? We got terms to pay this back over 10 years. Is the useful life of this type of equipment, where it's going to have this kind of use, realistically going to be 10 years? Is the equipment going to wear out before the loan is paid? That's my concern as a creditor.
I would say yes, just based on, the way the city uses its equipment. At the end of the day, it usually lasts, 10 years.
Okay.
And we do heavy use for a lot of things. Granted, we're not, clearing forests and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and
But a
I
lot
don't
of
know
our
enough about
graders
it
and things like that
to
have
provide
that
a
useful life.
solid answer for that. But that would be a concern of mine that we want to make sure. Would it be feasible or possible that we look at other terms
I mean, you can add conditions to this.
Well,
you
I
know,
don't know. I mean, if
to
we
the loan.
shorten the term, for instance, is that going to not provide them with adequate cash
We want
flow?
to hear from our legal counsel before we get too far into the details.
Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Got advice.
This one is somewhat unusual. I think the only loan that I'm aware of where the city or EDA was providing assistance where there was direct benefit to the owners was probably in Black Frost.
Yeah.
Where there were some of the principals
yeah,
owned,
okay.
but they did have other employees. I think this is the only one I've seen where the owners only are the employees, which essentially is just getting a loan to the owners. To the extent that the EDA is following job growth, I mean, they can wear a hat and say, I'm an employee, or they can just say, taking profits out. It's stimulating a business, but it's not really creating jobs. I don't think in the essence of traditionally what you've done, where you're looking at adding jobs and having specific requirements that a company will do that. So that's definitely different about this one. Second thing, as far as your question, which is a good one, when the security that they would provide, if we'd be getting basically a secured interest in this equipment, if it is already used equipment, it's not new, so I don't know. I don't even know what the equipment is, so I don't know what its useful life would be. I'm assuming the owners are probably going to be forming some type of LLC or corporation. We could get a personal guarantee, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure how secured this loan would
Well,
really
and we would be subordinate to the primary creditor.
Plus, we've got that. So when you add that into it, and if we're talking about equipment and we're subordinate to the primary lender, it's essentially unsecured. I don't
Right.
think there's realistically, we would, if everything went down, I don't know that we'd ever be able to recover off of the collateral.
I'm looking at the equipment list they provided, and it's a 2018 CAT. I don't know if that's I think it's a kind of like a skid steer type of a piece of equipment, and the vehicles is a 2012 and a 2014 pickup. So in 10 years, those would be pretty old items. So I agree with what Dan said about placing conditions after we've already given them the money. I think they would need to go to the SBDC before we provide the funds and revise their business plan and look at ways to assure they have enough capital going into it. It's easy to buy the equipment, but how do you continue to pay all your ongoing operating expenses for the future? And you can have two contracts, but are those two contracts just enough to make your payments? And how are you going to pay the insurance that you need to pay? How are you going to pay your fuel bill? Those items really aren't addressed in the business plan. So I think there's a lot to consider here.
Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
I'm just going to say, I'll be abstaining from any vote because I work at Bank Midwest, and that's the financer. But I do just want to say that just knowing businesses in New Ulm, I don't want to discourage us from considering entrepreneurs either. I think there's a lot of businesses here in town started by people that had a dream like that. And so and it's something like if the Career Expo, when we've been involved in that in the past, that we really talk to young people in town about too, and being able to start a business here yourself. So again, I won't be voting on this one, but just whether it's this one or future loans that come up before us, just consider that as well, that they can't. It might be hard to always have an established business coming to us.
Well, I agree. And I think what we want to do, and I think it's imperative, is that we create a formula to best maximize the chances of success. And I think that's one of the reasons that we contract and pay SBDC. We want people to come to town. We want them to realize their dreams, but we want them to succeed more often than not. We can't absolutely insure against any possible failure or downturn or whatever, or setback. But I think we could go in with this, a situation trying to assist them to maximize their chances of success. And that's, I think if we got some more information, it would be helpful to us to ensure that they're on a right trajectory. And I don't think we've got that here today. And it maybe the timing is such that we can't be afforded that because they want to get going. I get it. But I think this is could be, and just a question now, this is coming to us because normally would this kind of request go to the city revolving loan fund?
It could potentially go there, but they currently don't have funds in there, so this is going to be a loan that the EDA would make directly to the business.
Okay, but under other circumstances, they may come directly to the city for this kind of request. Or is this the
Potentially.
kind of request that we might see regularly then going forward?
Potentially. I mean, and those are some of those loan policies that we'll put into place, because again, it's when you're looking at it, why would we have the EDA approve giving a business money that we then have to ask council to approve the loan that the EDA made? So again, it's cutting out the middleman at the end of the day where you're in control of your money. And if you say, yes, this business, deserves, qualifies for a loan, or we want to give a business a loan, we don't have to then take it to city council at that point in time. So it'll kind of separate the two. I know we've done that in the past, with DLC and windings. But if you're giving the money out, you have the authority to give out your money. At the end of the day. And
Okay.
we did verify that with the auditors that yes, that is okay.
I do have a couple of comments. Number one, I did look through this, and I did have some concerns about the business plan as well. So I see there obviously was some concerns if they're being asked to go back to the SBDC to have that refined. Number two, that they just have the two entrepreneurs. I would really like to see, and maybe this is if there is somebody that can help them out with the finances, because if they're new to business, I think that that's important. Mark brought up a good point that we would kind of be this secondary on the collateral there, which makes me a little bit nervous. As part of this process, do we check the credit of the individuals?
So on this particular one, no, we didn't, because the bank is giving them
Sure.
a loan. And
Right.
the bank's not going to give them a loan unless they're credit worthy. If this was a loan purely where you as the EDA were financing, yes, we would do a credit check on them. Much like the home improvement loans, we do the credit check because there's no other source of financing for those projects.
Because I do see that, I know the bank would do their due diligence, but, as the EDA, I think that we need to do ours as well, because I think that would tell us a story about how they self-manage, and usually that carries over into how you run your business as well. But I also agree with Jessica that we need to, do what we can to support those entrepreneurs, because you don't know when it will be, the next big thing. And, we've had dreams, but I also want to make sure that it's being run responsibly, and that there is some, I just have concerns that their finances, that there's an opportunity there to create a job, perhaps.
I think everything's been said. I agree with Jessica and Andrea that I love the fact that we're getting a new business in town, hopefully. Questions, had they seen the SBDC yet? That's so important. It doesn't hurt to just go see them. It's free for them to do. Just a few more questions. If they would have been here, we could have asked those questions, and I know it's hard to get off of work, so I can't blame them for that, but yeah.
And I would say they actually did, before they applied for the loan here, they did actually try to reach out to the SBDC prior, and there were just some issues on the SBDC's end that they couldn't get in contact with them for whatever reason. And so now that Micon is here in our building, it'll be easier for them to get that FaceTime with them. So yes, prior to them even applying, they did try to reach out to the SBDC on multiple occasions.
I know that they want to get started on this right away, but possibly we could just table it for 1 month just to get our answers so that we have, our questions answered, rather than just say no.
Yeah.
We could also, with that too, Commissioner Fix, is have an emergency meeting if, if their projects are time sensitive, that they need to get going, and we get the information that we think we need, that we could call an emergency meeting. We've done that before.
Another item too is, could they temporarily lease the equipment? And I'd be much more willing if they needed some help, because that financial commitment would be much smaller until such time as they come back with a viable business plan. I mean, I'm just trying to look at alternatives. I don't want to discourage them from getting started, but I also feel, and again, this is sort of precedent setting for us. I think what we want to try to do is have a set of criteria and consistency so that unless they come to us, if it's an ongoing business that, say, wants to expand and they've been business owners for some time, I can understand where we may be able to waive that requirement to go to the Small Business Development Center. But I think if this is a new startup and they have no experience as to running a business, I think it's imperative of us that we have them go through that process. And in this particular instance, maybe we can compromise, if they can temporarily rent or lease the equipment, maybe we could look at funding that. And I would be very open to having a special meeting if that were a compromise that would be acceptable to them. And then we can get them up and started and then come back for the rest of the financing. And I don't know what that does for the bank part of it and what they're doing. But I just think we're just lacking enough information right now to really make an informed decision.
Yeah, I mean, you can choose to table it, but at this point in time, if we do not approve the loan, then the equipment they're going to purchase is not going to be available to them. They're holding it specifically on us funding the project. At this point in time. So if we don't move forward, then they lose out on that piece of equipment. I mean, it doesn't put you in an easy spot, and I get all the questions that you're asking, at the end of the day. But
that also raises a concern. Why weren't they here a month ago?
Yeah.
Or 2 months ago? So I don't know if I feel comfortable being put under the gun like that.
No,
Well, I'm when you look at the equipment that they're purchasing, it's hard to, they've got to be buying that from several places. It can't just be from one
Right.
sales entity.
And so they've already been pre-approved by their financial institution, and this loan would basically be covering the gap that they need to get started.
Yep.
Not the whole thing.
It's really, I mean, what we're providing them is equity that they're not putting in themselves.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. I think their investment was like $10,000, which under a normal business proposal such as this, that would be wholly inadequate.
Right.
So we're coming in and filling that gap in terms of, in lieu of a down payment, you could say, that they're not able to make. So that's what it really is. That's the reality of this request.
Chris, sorry. What do you know about the contracts that they have pending?
Not much. That they do have. They only said they had 2 contracts pending.
Okay.
Yep.
And neither one of them were able to be here today.
No.
Are they an entity already filed with Minnesota Secretary of State? Are they an LLC right now present?
Yes, they are an LLC.
Okay. Formed recently just for this purpose?
Yes.
I'd like to give them a chance. I know that there's questions here, but this is why we're here. And if this is our test pilot, whatever, then let's fix the system. Let's put in place what we need to do. But I hate to turn somebody down who just wants to try. And that's my 2 cents.
And I will say, that's kind of the reason you were able I sent the applications out early, so you could ask these questions, you know, and Dan and Mark came back, you know, with some questions, and Andrea had some questions, so that we could have these questions answered, because I know, you know, moving forward, we never want to bring applications to you, you know, give it to you on Friday and like, hey, you got to make a decision on Tuesday. And so that's part of the new process that we're doing, that ask those questions so we can get the answers, you know, when we're here. You know, and again, I don't know why they, you know, didn't come last month, you know, for a request, and maybe they missed that meeting, and, you know, again, I don't know the background on some of that stuff. But part of it too, you know, and I'll echo what Susan had said, you know, we're here to help these businesses at the end of the day. And again, that doesn't mean take all the risk in the world, you know, it make sound decisions, but we're not a bank. You know, we don't have that same criteria. The entrepreneur spirit is what this town is going to thrive on moving forward in the future. And we need to show that we are in their camp and we do back them, you know, at the end of the day. I mean, an easy one, you know, was one of the first loans I did here was Red Dragon Gaming. No bank wanted to touch them at the end of the day. Didn't want to help them get started. And I was like, yeah, we'll give you money. You know, and it was, again, it wasn't this dollar amount, but it was something that no one wanted to back, you know, at the end of the day. And look at what they're doing now. They're thriving. And all it took was that opportunity for the EDA to help fund them at the end of the day. You know, I don't think we've ever had a loan in default, you know, on the EDA side of things, because again, you know, when banks are backing, you know, willing to give that type of money out, that speaks volume. Because again, two bankers here, you know, you have stricter guidelines than we do, you know, at the end of the day. So, you know, to me, that carries a lot of weight when the bank gives you its letter of commitment. It is going to be backed by the SBA, which, you know, pertains more to the bank side of things, but, you know, we're not the only ones backing them at the end of the day. And yeah, like Dan had said, maybe this is the first one where we bite down and we look at the process and the procedures to make sure that it's spelled out at the end of the day. You know, this is kind of new for everyone.
Could, at this point, I ask you that we do that then? Provide a more solid framework so that we have an easier time pondering this going forward.
Yeah.
But it's the first one we've had like this.
Yeah.
Right, and I think I think that it's very important that we do that.
Yeah.
I understand, we're in a different realm with these sorts of things. We're willing to take a little more risk than the bank. When I was first being trained as a banker, they told me, as you make a loan, just pretend you're handing out grandma's last dollar that she has in the bank, so keep that in mind. We don't do that here. It's a little bit different set of circumstances. I get that.
Yeah.
But I think I go back to the last thing I ever wanted to do as a banker, the last thing I want to do as an EDA commissioner is to set somebody up to fail.
Yep.
I think if we're committing to do this, we want to ensure the greatest chance of success that we can.
Yep.
And I think that we're not doing that in this case.
Well-
Because we don't have all the facts and details that we can in order to make a good decision on it. Now, that being said, for whatever reasons, we've got backed into a corner here. Either we make this decision today or these guys probably aren't going to start. And which I guess would be unfortunate.
But Dan, sometimes that isn't bad. Sometimes having the time to go back, review what your plan is, make adjustments to it. Maybe there's things that they haven't thought of right now that they can change when the SBDC sees this plan. And maybe there's just so many variables you don't know.
Right.
And when we don't have a plan that is, you know, talks about the contracts that they're going to receive or what they're going to really go after, or the potential, they did mention a third employee in their plan. I mean, those type of things, if you can expand on that, maybe it makes everyone feel better to offer that $50,000 loan. I agree with you. I don't ever want to diminish entrepreneurs or hinder that. spirit, because that is what we need. But at the same time, we want those that have that spirit to be successful in what they're going to do. And I just don't see that this convinces me that that's going to happen.
Yeah, this is, in my mind, still too much of a work in progress that we don't have. But again, the other side of that is either we decide today and say yes, and then they go on, and we hope and pray they are successful, or we say no, and then maybe their dreams are done. I don't know. I mean, so that's kind of where we're at.
If we needed to hold another meeting for this, I mean, there's been, I guess, opportunities for them to be present here, but I think I would like an opportunity to at least hear from them. And again, it's not that I don't, I have concerns, but you tell me alone that you don't have concerns for. That's the reason that they're going for financing to begin with. So it's not that I'm opposed to it. I just, if there's a way that we can hear from them, I don't know. I think that would give us the information we need to make a vote right away.
I mean, we can hold a special meeting, if we put it out.
Pretty quickly.
It would have to be 3 days, Roger? 3-day notice? Yeah, 3-day
So
notice, so potentially Friday.
What would be a turnaround, or potentially a turnaround for them to meet with the SBDC?
That's what I was going to ask. Could they do that within a week?
Or even a couple of days? When is our person here? And would they make special arrangements to come and meet with these folks to get some information that we could turn around and get a better chance of evaluation?
Yeah, I
Is
can
it
ask
possible or
Mike.
not? I mean, I don't
I could
know.
ask Mike if he can come down to specifically meet with them.
I would like to sit down at some point too and talk about forming, a plan for us with these types of loan requests where, like I said before, it could be specific maybe for our needs, that they could put together a business plan, projected financial statements, and even a loan proposal that would be suitable for us to go through, so we have what we're looking for necessary information. So again, I'm making you work extra hard, I get it, but I think that going forward, we're not going to have a day like we're going to have today with sitting here, worrying about, is this a good deal to do or not, and I, so that would be something I would look for. And I don't know if it's too late for any of this to happen in such a short period of time or not, but maybe we should ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, to do all the things you want as far as application wise, I mean, yeah, we can get that. I mean, I could technically do that in a week, but it doesn't change their information for this specific loan at the end of the day. SBDC giving them a revised business plan in a week, that I can guarantee that's not going to happen. They can meet with them, they can go over their business plan, but having a revised version after meeting with the SBDC one time is probably not going to happen, within a week. That's going to be, multiple, potentially 2-3 sessions, and that's where the caveats kick in, where, part of it is they do have to meet with SBDC on a regular basis to work on their financials and their projections and submit them to the EDA or, to the city. So we know that they're on track, that someone helping them,
And you've
with their
spoken to the
financials.
principals, and they're willing to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
So all 3 conditions that are part of this loan, they are willing to do all 3 of those moving forward. So sitting down with the SBDC to refine that, and when that's done, I will be sending that out to all the commissioners. When we get their financial reports coming in, yes, that will be sent out to you as well, so you can see that they are making these progresses, they are making the checks, and maybe we only keep them, with the SBDC doing their financials for a year when we see that progress and having them do that, or maybe we just get their financials after a year of them going every quarter. It's once a year we just get their yearly financials to make sure that they're still on track and still still doing their business.
But it does say we would get their financials quarterly
Yes.
at this point? Okay.
Yep. They would meet with the SBDC to prepare those for that. And this isn't too different from, I sit on the Region 9 Loan Committee, and this is some of the very same caveats that they do to other, high-risk businesses at the end of the day to work with the SBDC.
And do you have any idea of what that success rate is then in those situations?
They have a very high success rate.
Okay.
They do have a very high success rate.
They do work with individuals that maybe don't have very good credit, that have been rejected by banks
Yeah.
as well. And they do have a pretty high success rate, even given those criteria.
We should be aware that the Bank of Midwest is financing them. And I would think that they would do their due diligence before they would give them any type of a loan.
Yeah.
Just if I could comment, we don't know what other collateral Bank Midwest might be getting. If they could have personal guarantees, they could be pledging other assets that they have. So
Well-
they could be in a much more solid situation.
They're hedging their
Right.
risk with an SBA guarantee. So let's not,
right.
let's not
Right, so you've
sugarcoat
also
that.
got that, so they're,
Their risk is much less than our risk.
right. And the other thing is, to the extent that there's obligations by the borrowers to be performed, you have to have in mind that ultimately, if the loan agreement says this, your recourse is to say they breached and called in the note. And what's that going to do? So if they're not following up, they're not following their business plan, is that what you want to have happen?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
And then what
good
is that
it?
going to
Yeah.
accomplish? We're going to be second to the primary lender.
It-
So how much clout really is that? I mean,
The time to do the business plan is before you give them the money,
yes. yeah.
because there's really no incentive for them to do it after they've received our funds. There just isn't. Oh, I didn't have time that month. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to that. And I'm not saying they would do that, but that is some things that can happen.
So why don't we just say you need to do that and come back, and we'll have a special meeting for it then.
Yeah, we'll shoot. I'll reach out, so we'll shoot for sometime next week then for a special meeting.
We need to formally,
I'm going to offer a motion to table this event.
There we
table
go.
this
Thank you,
motion
Les.
For more additional information.
I will
We
second
should
the
probably
motion.
note, Roger, this is a conflict of interest for you as well. This is your new law firm.
What?
Is represented on this,
I didn't know that.
Mr. Boyle.
I'm sorry, I was
There-
not.
Yeah.
I just saw it too, so.
attorney, yes.
But I know with Jessica mentioning a conflict, I think it's also a conflict in your world.
Sure, that would be it. I'm sorry, I was not
Yeah.
aware that was the case, so, all right. Who are,
Oh, new world for you.
who are the applicants?
Well, it sounds like Mike Boyle's the attorney for this firm,
What's the name of the applicant?
Lethens Law Firm.
No, Mike
The applicant
Vedder,
is M&K
Forestry and Land Management.
I'm sorry?
M&K, go ahead.
which is Mike Vedder and
Christopher Mathewitz.
Christopher Mathewitz.
Okay.
But I'll go ahead and offer that motion.
I will second it with the understanding that we speed the
Special meeting.
process, special meeting.
Sure.
So the motion is to table this request until such time as we can have a special meeting
Yeah,
to make a final decision.
we'll shoot for next week.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion on the motion and second? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
That was a long one.
Where are we? I've lost my place in my book here.
7.1.
Letter 7.1, letter of intent for Garden Terrace lot.
All right. So before you, you have a letter of intent for Garden Terrace. And with this, it's really just accepting the letter of intent from the developer. There are a lot of contingencies with moving forward and actually, putting together a purchase agreement, and that would be putting together a TIF agreement, which would be on the city side of things, land price, the land stabilization, financed approved for the project, and then the city applying for a Minnesota workforce housing grant. And if the EDA approves the LOI, then staff will proceed with working with the developer to see if the project is feasible. We do have Wendy Anderson on Zoom that can talk about the project and any questions that you have. And they also have John Meyer, who's an engineer, to talk about some of the land stabilization issues, because I think that might be a roadblock per se for that. They did submit some information that it would be roughly between $700 to about $900,000 to do soil remediation, but that also did include some of the foundation work as well. So part of that we'd have to take into consideration. And then after that, if you do want to have staff can kind of continue talking with the developers, we will go into a closed session to discuss some of the caveats or some of the terms that you would like us to present to the developer. So with that, let's see. I will see if I can, oops.
And this specific lot is located?
In front of Garden Terrace. So it's the Garden Terrace 3 lot. Wendy, I think I asked you to unmute, so you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
there
you.
you go.
Got
So
it.
this is Wendy Anderson, and she is, will speak on behalf of the developer.
Right, and one of the developers jumped on too. He just got on, Don Yankee. So today we have John Meyer and Don Yankee on board. I presented a LOI for the Garden Terrace property. And we did go through the soil borings reports, and it's a pretty unique property that it needs quite a bit of work, but it's not a property that cannot be worked. We just need to get into the cost and kind of go forward to, if we want to ask some questions of John Myers so you can understand what needs to be done. And Don Yankee will be developing, putting two 27-unit apartment buildings to meet the needs of the city of New Ulm.
Wendy, is this the only location that you folks are looking at?
This was the only location that was presented to us from the city.
Okay. I've been dead set against this from day one, and I'll continue to be. I just don't think that I just don't like that location. I just think it ruins the current views of the current Garden Terrace apartments 1 and 2.
Okay, and we addressed that the heights of the buildings would not interfere with the views of the current apartment.
It's just lower.
It's lower, but it's still.
Well, and the reason we're here today is because the EDA owns this land.
Yes.
So we're the landowner, and one of the functions of the EDA is for housing. And so in so much as this presents as a possible alternative to meet the current desperate needs for housing is one of the big reasons we're here. I guess the biggest concern I think that we're all considering right now is the remediation of the soil, and that's probably kind of a wild card. We won't know until we get into it what it's all going to cost.
Yeah.
And what I think we're thinking initially was the EDA would probably bear most, or if not all of that cost. Is that kind of the...
Some costs, and then that could be, again, that would be discussions for negotiation
And then
point, what you're willing to cover. And again, Wendy did provide, it'd be roughly, like I said, between 700 to 900,000 to remediate that soil for both buildings. But that would also include some of that foundation. So TIF would cover part of the foundational cost.
Okay.
So that might shrink what the actual remediation portion would be. And again, maybe John can speak to out of the proposal, what percentage would be the remediation versus the actual foundation cost?
The split between remediation and the foundation cost, the remediation is less than half.
Okay.
Let's see. It's actually it's I would say 25% or so.
Okay.
A lot of this is unknown because the soil layers are are in such poor condition. So we don't know how many layers of remediation we'll need to apply to achieve a structural base, but we're not removing anything from the site. We're treating it so that we can work on top of it and install the buildings that'll be seated in the rock layers below.
I believe when it comes to kind of the soil issue that we have here, that during the expansion of Vogel Arena for the Renew projects, that the original plan was to have the gymnastics facility actually be on the right side of the building, but because of the costs associated with that, there were alternatives explored. So I'm just curious if there will be a point where this just would become cost prohibitive to do, if because it looks like it's a large amount of area and it's kind of on the same, it's on that same street there.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of where the discussions are, that potentially the soil remediation or getting through the ground could make this project not feasible at all. Or even if we did have the EDA did come in, remediate 100% of the soil, it might not pencil out. And so part of it too is if this site isn't feasible for something like that, I would still like to move forward with the developers to look at other sites potentially available and
Absolutely.
using and is that a better use of EDA funding to help them secure a site that doesn't have all these issues? Is that a better
it boils
option?
down to a simple cost benefit. I
Yeah.
mean, could we spend less money for the same amount of land somewhere else that would be a feasible alternative?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we would want to consider as we go forward. I think my thought would be if we could continue to work with a developer, if we can kind of hone in on what the exact cost or get a close estimation the best we can on this, and then we weigh that against looking at other possible sites. Now, that becomes a question unto itself, and maybe what we could do is if the city staff could look at or consider some other possible sites that would be feasible as an alternative and get an estimation of what the land acquisition costs would be and then potential improvement costs and weigh that versus development of this site.
Yeah.
And then we'd at least have two alternatives. And from the developer standpoint, would that be something that you would continue or would consider continuing with the EDA if we were to look at other possible locations?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. Glad to hear that. And again, it's just, we're in the early stages. I think more multifamily housing is absolutely, and if the workforce grant is an avenue that we could pursue to facilitate that, I think we're on the right track there. Now, we've got a development team that's coming forward. I think that's a great time for us to look at what our best alternatives are. So this is just one site, and we know how Les feels about it, so we'll...
Yes, you do. It's been
We can-
5, 6, 7 years, I think I've said no to
we
this.
we can see what this would do versus the possibility of other potential sites.
But I strongly support the project. I want to make
Yeah,
that very
no,
clear.
I-
I don't approve of this location.
I've never heard you ever speak
Yes.
out against housing, Les.
Yes.
I agree
Thank
with
you.
that, so.
Building. So what I have up on the screen right now, this is, potentially what they would look like. Again, maybe this isn't the right, perfect design, but it is a temporary mock-up of what, they potentially would look like. And let me get over here. Kind of the layout. But really, I think what Wendy was trying to show is how they're going to construct. So this is kind of a newer technology. They're extreme panels where the insulation is already just in the middle of sandwiched between the boards. These buildings would be, go ahead, Wendy.
Chris, we have Don on, so if he could go over the construction piece too of what the
Okay.
building.
Perfect. Yeah. And before I turn it over to John, I mean, these really are going to be, green buildings, and that's really what they're striving for with this build. But John, if you have 5 minutes or probably about 5 minutes to just kind of briefly go over the construction material and kind of what the buildings would be. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, so these would be made out of structural insulated panels. So it's layers of OSB with expanded polystyrene in the middle as the structural, but they have no red listed chemicals in them. They're very, very energy efficient. So we work with the Energy Star program. So these would be certified Energy Star Net Zero ready and also Indoor Air Quality Plus certified. So we are trying to find how to bring healthy, comfortable, affordable housing to smaller communities has really been our drive. And, so we've tried to design a building that fits the needs, which is why, on a 3-story building, we got an elevator in it, which we don't have to by code, but we don't want to restrict any age levels or physical abilities on any of the floors. So we really tried to make the building an asset because we just understand in a lot of these areas, we can't go add pools and big fitness centers and all those things. So our drive is how do we build something that's sustainable and yet gives people a good quality of life living there without having to have an extraordinary high income level.
So John, with this kind of construction style, does it, with these panels, does it increase or decrease the time of construction at all?
It decreases it.
I would think so.
These,
Okay.
These buildings are, yeah, it's halfway between modular and site built. So it's a site built product, but all the prefabrication and structural side of it comes together. So we look at roughly an 8 to 9 month turnaround, start to finish on these type of buildings.
Okay. For that many units you're talking that we're proposing, that would be that turnaround. That's quite
Yep.
good. Yeah. And from a cost perspective, are there cost efficiencies you realize with this type of method or
Yeah, right now the way lumber pricing is,
I gotcha.
cost-effective building this way. And the nice side working as the developer, if we can lower the operating cost, that's our goal.
Sure.
And we're actually, the panels are manufactured in Minnesota, over by Marshall, Minnesota, and these products, I know you mentioned the word new. The technology goes back to 1937, but we've built with Kraus Anderson, Aeon up in Minneapolis. So we have multiple projects up in the state with a history behind them as well, just to give people a comfort feeling. I don't want you to feel like you're going out on a limb trying something that's never been done before.
John, would there be parking facilities as well, or how would that be handled?
We have it as optional where we can either surface park it or we do a lot of times do conditioned garages with it. That can be as a option for the tenants. But a lot of it is just dependent on what piece of property we get and what space is available.
Sure.
Because we've tried to shrink the footprint down so we can actually put the entire building and surface parking on just shy of 1 acre. So a lot of times it just depends on the parameters we have.
And it looks like today we're just receiving and ordering filed the letter from you folks regarding the Garden Terrace lot and what the overview is. So I know we're way behind on our time this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and offer that motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion at this time?
This is stating we're just receiving it.
Yeah,
Correct.
we're just receiving.
It's
They're
their
not-
letter of intent.
We're not voting on anything. We know that.
Right. And I think we've addressed some preliminary issues today about remediation and we're going to explore this site versus alternatives. And I think I'm sure we're going to have future discussions on this.
Oh, yeah. And I'll
so-
work with Wendy and John, to keep those discussions going and see, different sites that potentially would suit their needs as well. And, kind of get all those caveats or all the contingencies kind of lined up so that when it is presented, we know where this project is going to be.
I have to say, I'm excited that we have a developer that's interested in New Ulm and is looking at multifamily housing, because we all know that the need is still great today, and we applaud you for looking to New Ulm, and we look forward to working with you. So,
Absolutely.
With that, I guess I'll call for the vote. All in favor of receiving this notification of intent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried.
Thank you. And I'll talk with Wendy and John, offline and keep those discussions moving.
Okay. Next item of business.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For your time today. Next item of business, 8.1, Section 8, HCV, Public Housing Revised Income Limits.
I'll offer the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. So at this time, I would assume we could table 8.2, a closed session.
Yeah, if you want, because that discussion was primarily to see what negotiating points, you wanted to have. But if you want me to get what their asks are outside of what the contingencies are, what they would do for land value and stuff like that, I can get that, and then we can have a closed session at a different
well,
time.
and I think the whole remediation point is such a big factor in this particular case. I would like us to have a little bit more detail before we would maybe go into a closed session. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'd entertain a motion at this time to table item 8.2 for a future meeting.
Sounds good.
I'll make the motion to table 8.2.
I'll second.
A motion is second. Any additional discussion?
Chairman Bram,
Yes. Yes, sir.
was one of the other factors alternate sites as well, or is that not part
I
of
would
this?
like to just see what we have for alternate sites. If for no other reason, then it gives us kind of the next step
Well, and
for the next developer or for.
Wait, I think it
that we need to
identifies.
start moving down.
And part of it is, we're putting the cart in front of the horse, because I think the comp plan is going to address that too. But I think that being that the need is really great today, and I know we're going to get a new housing study, and if we have a willing developer, I think we want to keep their eyes focused on a potential New Ulm site, be it this one or another. But that, absolutely, Andrea, I think we have to look at the potential of other developers. So I would like to keep that moving forward as well.
Yeah, no, and we can definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 9.1, Economic Development Director, Assistant Manager's Activity Report.
Yeah. So, really, the big stuff to call out right now, I think, is moving forward with the mall project. We're resuming discussions with that. The letter was sent to the developer saying that it had gone through the lien process. The IRS had not staked a claim for the pieces of the mall. So now it's up to them to do the title work. I did send them an email the other day to see where they were at with that, so we can resume those discussions and get that project moving again. The Get It Ready loan, actually have 2 applications in, a third one potentially on the way, so that program is starting to take off. And then potentially there will be another commercial rehab loan coming through. It's a very small amount, so it won't need EDA approval. So that'll probably be in next month's report. But we did give one to the Hive to redo the upstairs, their second floor, to turn into a bridal suite. So it's across the street from, or catty corner to the proposed bridal center that's going to be opening up. So that's kind of all we have right now.
Great.
I'll make a motion to accept the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager's Activity Report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. That's it. We are adjourned.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.